I didn't expect my life to change because of a broken elevator and a guy named James standing too close to me at 11:47 p.m. But that's exactly how it started. I was coming home late from work, exhausted, half running on caffeine and bad decisions. My apartment building is old, the kind with cracked tile floors and an elevator that only works when it feels like it. That night, the doors opened, made a sound like they were dying, and then nothing. Lights flickered, stopped, trapped. I let out a long breath and leaned my head back against the wall, already planning the angry email I'd never send to management. Then someone cleared their throat. I hadn't noticed him step in before the doors closed. Tall, broad shoulders, dark hoodie, hands shoved into his pockets like he was trying not to take up space. He glanced at the control panel, then at me. "Looks like we're screwed," he said, calm but amused. That was James. We laughed, that awkward laugh strangers share when they don't know what else to do. A few minutes passed. No movement, no signal. Just the hum of a stuck elevator and the uncomfortable awareness of being alone with another guy in a small metal box. "I'm Michael," I said, mostly to fill the silence. "James," he replied. "Third floor." "Fifth," I said. "Guess we're neighbors." He smiled at that, a slow, easy smile that made my chest tighten in a way I didn't fully register yet. We talked. About dumb things. The building. The weather. Work. He was an architect, recently moved back to the city. I worked in marketing and hated it more than I probably should have admitted to a stranger. Time passed faster than I expected. At some point, the air shifted, not in a dramatic way, just awareness, the kind where you suddenly realize how close someone is standing, how you can smell their cologne, how their arm brushes yours every time the elevator shudders. I noticed his hands first. Big, veiny, resting casually at his sides. Then his voice, low and steady, filling the small space. Then the way he looked at me, not checking his phone, not staring at the ceiling, but actually looking at me. The elevator jolted suddenly, lights flickering back on. We both stumbled slightly, instinctively reaching out. His hand caught my arm. Firm. Warm. For half a second, neither of us moved. Then he let go, slower than necessary. "Well," he said quietly, "guess we're free." The doors opened with a ding that felt way too loud. We stepped out together, walked in the same direction. Third floor came first. He stopped, turned toward me. "Hey, Michael," he said. "If the elevator tries to kill us again, we should probably exchange numbers." I laughed, but my heart was beating faster than it should have been. Yeah, probably smart. We swapped phones. Our fingers brushed. Again, as the doors to his floor slid shut, he held my gaze just a second longer than polite. Not enough to be obvious, just enough to feel intentional. I stood there alone afterward, staring at my reflection in the elevator mirror, realizing something had already shifted. I didn't know it yet, but getting stuck with James was the beginning of a slow, dangerous unraveling, one that would involve late-night texts, crossed boundaries, and a man who kept insisting he was straight right up until the moment he wasn't. And I was already in deeper than I wanted to admit. James texted me before I even made it up to my apartment. James, alive after the elevator incident? I stared at my phone longer than necessary, smiling like an idiot. Me. Barely. Considering suing the building. 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Then, James. If you need a witness, I'm your guy. That should have been nothing. Just friendly banter between 2 neighbors who got briefly trapped together. But I felt it anyway. That low buzz under my skin, the one I only ever got when something was about to get complicated. Over the next few days, we kept texting. Casual stuff at first. Complaints about work. Photos of terrible takeout. A shared hatred of mornings. He mentioned his friend Andrew, who kept trying to set him up with girls. I mentioned my coworker Brian, who overshared way too much about his personal life. normal, safe, until it wasn't. It started with a late-night message. James, random question. You ever feel like your life's on pause? I was lying in bed, lights off, phone glowing against the ceiling. I hesitated before answering. Me. All the time. That opened something. He told me about moving back after a breakup that didn't end cleanly. I told him about staying too long in jobs, relationships, apartments, waiting for some invisible sign to move on. The texts got longer, slower, more thoughtful. Then came the silences. Those moments where neither of us replied for 10 minutes, then 20, like we were both hovering over our phones thinking the same thing and afraid to say it. One night, close to midnight, he sent, "James, you up?" I was. Of course I was. Me, yeah. A pause. Then, James, want to come over for a drink? My heart kicked hard against my ribs. This wasn't a date. He hadn't called it one. But it wasn't nothing either. His apartment smelled like cedar and clean laundry. Minimalist. Too neat. The kind of place someone lives in when they don't want people lingering too long. He handed me a beer, our fingers brushing again, and I wondered if he noticed the way my breath hitched every time that happened. We sat on opposite ends of the couch at first. Talked. Laughed. Avoided looking directly at each other. At some point, he mentioned his ex, Daniel, and stopped mid-sentence. "Sorry," he said. "Didn't mean to dump that on you." "It's fine," I said quickly. Too quickly. Really. He studied me then. Not casually. Not politely. Like he was recalculating something. "You're easy to talk to," he said. The words landed heavier than they should have. "So are you," I replied. Silence stretched. Charged. The kind where you can feel the air pressing in. He shifted closer. Not touching. Just closer enough that our knees almost brushed. "I should probably say this," he said quietly, eyes fixed somewhere past my shoulder. I don't usually. I waited. Barely breathing. "I've never been with a guy," he finished. There it was. My chest tightened, instinctively pulling back, walls snapping into place. I'd been here before. Curious straight guys. Almosts. Confessions that went nowhere. "Okay," I said carefully. "We don't have to." "But," he interrupted, finally looking at me. "I keep thinking about you." The room went very still. "I don't know what that means," he added. "And it's freaking me out." I swallowed. "Then we should slow down." He nodded. Didn't move away. "Yeah," he said. "We should." Neither of us did. When his hand finally touched mine, it was tentative. Questioning. I didn't pull back. That was all it took. His fingers curled around mine, grip tightening like he was afraid I'd disappear if he didn't hold on. He leaned in, stopping inches from my face. "Tell me to stop," he whispered. I didn't. And when he kissed me, it wasn't desperate or sloppy or rushed. It was careful, like he was memorizing the moment, like he already knew it was going to change everything. I should have walked away. Instead, I kissed him back and crossed a line neither of us was ready for. The kiss lingered longer than either of us expected. It wasn't hungry. It wasn't rushed. It was slow, uncertain, like James was testing the ground beneath his feet, making sure it wouldn't give out. His lips were warm, slightly hesitant, and when he pulled back, his forehead rested against mine. "Holy shit," he murmured. I let out a shaky breath. Yeah. For a moment, neither of us moved. His hand was still wrapped around mine, thumb brushing lightly over my knuckles like it was grounding him. I could feel how tense he was, like his body hadn't decided whether to lean in or bolt for the door. "I don't do this," he said quietly. I nodded. "You don't have to." That wasn't what he meant. We both knew it. He pulled away first, standing up abruptly and running a hand through his hair. "I need a second." "Take all the seconds you want," I said, forcing my voice to stay steady. He walked to the kitchen, cracked open another beer he didn't really drink, just held. I watched his back rise and fall, the muscles tightening beneath his t-shirt. This was the moment things usually ended. The awkward laugh, the apology, the promise to stay friends. Instead, he turned around. "You're not freaking out," he said, almost accusingly. "Should I be?" He shook his head. "Most people would be." "I'm not most people," I said. "And you didn't do anything wrong." That seemed to hit him harder than the kiss had. He came back to the couch, sat closer this time. Our thighs touched. Neither of us moved away. "I keep telling myself this is just curiosity," he admitted. "But that feels like bullshit." I smiled faintly. "It usually is." He laughed under his breath, then went quiet again. "I've dated women my whole life. Serious relationships. I was engaged once." He paused. "Her name was Emily. Everyone thought we were perfect." "And you?" "I thought something was missing," he said. "I just didn't know what." The honesty in his voice made my chest ache. I didn't reach for him this time. Didn't want to push. Instead, I said, "We don't have to define anything tonight." James studied my face like he was trying to memorize it again. "But you want to." It wasn't a question. "I want you," I said softly. "Whatever that looks like." He exhaled slowly, like he'd been holding that breath for years. "Come here," he said. This time, when he kissed me, it was different. Less careful, more intentional. His hand slid to my waist, fingers pressing in just enough to make my pulse spike. I could feel the tension melting into something warmer, heavier. But then he stopped, pulled back again. "I need to be honest," he said. "I don't know where this goes, and I don't want to hurt you." I searched his face. "Then don't disappear tomorrow." His jaw tightened. "I won't." That promise mattered more than the kiss. We didn't sleep together that night. We sat on the couch until way too late, talking about everything and nothing. Childhood stories. His friends William and David, who still thought he was hopelessly straight. My ex Noah, who taught me not to chase men who couldn't meet me halfway. At some point, my head ended up on his shoulder, his arm draped over me like it belonged there. When I finally stood to leave, he walked me to the door. "Hey," he said, just before I stepped into the hallway. "Yeah?" He leaned in, kissed me once more. Quick, decisive, like he'd made up his mind about at least one thing. "I'm not pretending this didn't happen," he said. Neither was I. As I walked back to my apartment, heart pounding, I knew this was the dangerous part. Not the kiss, not the attraction. It was the hope. And James was already closer to my heart than I'd planned. James didn't disappear. That alone felt like a small miracle. The next morning, I woke up to a text from him sent at 7:12 a.m. James morning. "Just wanted you to know I'm still thinking about last night." I stared at the screen, heart thudding, before typing back. Me too. That became our new normal. Not dramatic declarations, just little check-ins. Proof we were still orbiting each other. We started running into each other on purpose. Coffee in the lobby turned into walks around the block. Walks turned into dinners that were definitely not dates, but somehow lasted 3 hours. He talked about projects at work, the pressure to have it all figured out. I talked about how tired I was of pretending I didn't want something real. The physical stuff stayed minimal, almost careful. Sometimes his hand would rest at the small of my back when we crossed the street. Sometimes our knees would touch under the table, and neither of us would move them. Every brush of skin felt amplified, like we were teenagers again. One night, about a week in, he invited me over again. This time, there was no beer. Just takeout and a movie neither of us paid attention to. We sat closer than before. His arm around me, my head resting against his chest, listening to his heartbeat slowly calm. "You're dangerous," he said quietly. I smiled. "You knew that already." "No," he said. "I mean, you make this feel normal, and that scares me." I turned to look at him. "James, nothing about this is forcing you." "I know," he said. "That's the problem." He told me he'd talked to Alexander, his older brother, left out details but admitted he was confused. Alexander had laughed and said, "You've always overthought your feelings. Maybe stop doing that." James didn't laugh when he told me that. I keep waiting for the panic to outweigh how good this feels, he admitted. It hasn't. That night he kissed me again. Longer. Deeper. His hand slid under my shirt, warm palms against my back, and I felt him tense, not pulling away, just steadying himself. "Is this okay?" he asked. "Yes," I whispered. It was slow, exploratory, full of pauses where we checked each other's faces, made sure we were still on the same page. When we finally pulled apart, his forehead rested against mine like before. "I don't want this to be a secret," he said suddenly. My stomach flipped. "It doesn't have to be, but I'm not ready to explain it to the world," he added. "Yet," I nodded. "That's fair," he exhaled, relieved. "Thank you for not rushing me." I should have said something then, about what it feels like to be the one waiting, about how hope can turn sharp if you're not careful. Instead, I just held him. A few days later, we ran into his friends, Ethan, Jacob, and Liam, outside a bar. James froze for half a second before introducing me as my neighbor, not my friend, not my date, my neighbor. They were loud, half drunk, teasing him like always. Someone made a joke about him finally settling down with a girl. James laughed along, but his hand tightened around mine briefly, hidden between our bodies. That squeeze told me everything. Later that night, walking home, I finally asked, "Do you regret tonight?" He stopped walking, turned to me. "No, I just don't know how to be this person in front of them yet." I nodded. Again, but something inside me shifted. Just a little. Because I knew this part of the story. The quiet compromises. The patience that starts to feel one-sided. The love that grows faster than the courage to claim it. James kissed me goodnight anyway. Soft. Familiar. And as I watched him walk back to his apartment, I wondered how long I could live in the space between almost and enough. I tried to convince myself I was fine with the pace. I really did. James still texted every day, still came over late at night, still kissed me like he meant it. But there was a subtle shift, one you only notice once it's already happening. He stopped holding my hand in public, stopped lingering when we said goodbye in the lobby, started checking the hallway before pulling me close. It wasn't dramatic. It was cautious. And that somehow hurt more. One Friday night, he showed up at my door looking wired, restless energy buzzing under his skin. "Can I stay here tonight?" he asked. "Not hang out, not have a drink, stay." I stepped aside without a word. We didn't turn on any lights, just collapsed onto my bed fully clothed, lying side by side, staring at the ceiling like neither of us trusted ourselves to do more. "I ran into Benjamin today," he said suddenly. "Old college friend." "And?" I asked. "He asked if I was seeing anyone." James swallowed. I said no. I turned my head toward him. "Are you?" He met my gaze. I don't know what to call this. "That's starting to feel like an answer," I said quietly. He flinched. "That's not fair." "I know," I said, "but it's honest." Silence stretched between us. Heavy. Uncomfortable. "I'm trying," he said finally. "I swear I am." "I see that," I said. "But trying still has a cost." He rolled onto his side, propping himself up on his elbow, eyes searching my face. "Do you want me to stop?" The question landed wrong. "No," I said. "I want you to choose." He looked away. That hurt more than if he'd said no. That night, he held me tighter than usual, like he was afraid I'd slip away if he loosened his grip. His breath against my neck, his arm heavy around my waist. I barely slept. The next few days were distant, not cold, just quieter. Then came the party. His friend Mason was turning 30, and James hesitated before inviting me. "You don't have to come," he said. "It's going to be loud, crowded." "I want to," I replied, "unless you don't want me there." He didn't answer right away. That was answer enough. But he still said yes. The party was packed, music too loud, drinks flowing, everyone shouting over each other. James stuck close to me at first, his hand resting briefly at my lower back when no one was looking. Then Sarah showed up. Tall, confident, familiar with his friends. She hugged him a little too long, laughed a little too easily. Someone leaned over and said, "Didn't you two almost date?" James laughed, didn't correct them. I watched him slowly drift away from me, pulled back into the version of himself everyone expected. Straight jokes, easy charm, safe distance. At one point, I caught his eye across the room. For a second, he looked torn. Then Sarah kissed his cheek. That was it. I grabbed my jacket and left without saying goodbye. He texted me 10 minutes later. "James, where'd you go?" I didn't reply. He knocked on my door just after midnight. When I opened it, he looked wrecked. Hair messed up. Voice low. "Please don't shut me out," he said. "I'm not," I replied. "I'm stepping back." "Because of tonight?" "Because of everything," I said. "I can't keep being your almost." He nodded slowly, like he'd known this moment was coming. "I want to lose you." "Then stop hiding me," I said. "Or let me go." He stood there, torn between two lives. And, for the first time since the elevator, I didn't wait for him to decide. The next few days were quiet. Not the peaceful kind. The kind that buzzes in your ears when you're trying not to check your phone every 5 minutes. I went to work, answered emails, nodded through meetings, all while wondering if James was pacing his apartment the way I was pacing mine. He didn't text. Neither did I. On the fourth night, there was a knock at my door. I already knew it was him. James looked different, not wrecked, like after the party. Calmer, focused, like he'd finally stopped running in circles inside his own head. "I'm not here to convince you," he said, before I could say anything. "I just need to say this out loud." I stepped aside and let him in. He didn't sit, didn't touch me, just stood there, hands clenched, breathing slow and deliberate. "I told Sarah I'm not interested," he said. "Told her I'm seeing someone." My heart stuttered. "James." "I told Ethan, Liam, and Jacob too," he continued. Didn't explain everything. Just said it wasn't their business, which, honestly, felt good. I stared at him, trying not to hope too fast. "I spent my whole life being the guy everyone expected," he said. "The safe version. The straight answer. And yeah, it took me way too long to realize I was hiding behind that." He finally looked at me then. Really looked. "I don't want an almost," he said. "I want you. Publicly. Privately. All of it. Even if I'm still figuring out the labels." My chest ached. Why now? "Because losing you felt worse than the fear," he said simply. I swallowed hard. "You know this won't be easy." "I know," he said, "but I'm done pretending easy was ever enough." I crossed the space between us before he could second-guess himself. When I kissed him this time, there was no hesitation, no pulling back. His hands slid into my hair, like they'd been waiting weeks to do that. We laughed after, breathless, foreheads pressed together. "Guess the elevator really did trap us," I said. He smiled. "Best malfunction of my life." We didn't rush into anything after that. But we stopped hiding. Coffee dates turned into hand-holding. Friends turned into conversations instead of lies. Some people surprised him, some didn't. Alexander just smirked and said, "Told you so." Months later, we rode that same elevator together. It stalled for half a second between floors. James squeezed my hand. "Still with me?" he asked. I smiled. "Yeah, I'm not going anywhere." And this time, neither was he.